Lucas watched the sky darken as he slowly walked down the dirt road leading to the center of the village. The night was cold, but there was something more disturbing than the icy air enveloping him. He looked up and furrowed his brow as he noticed that the moon, usually bright and imposing, was missing. The darkness seemed thicker, almost palpable, as if it were devouring every inch of the horizon. In the village center, the dim lights of the street lamps struggled to illuminate the deserted streets. A few villagers whispered among themselves, looking up at the sky with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Strange, isn't it?" said Dona Marta as she passed by Lucas. "I've never seen a moonless night like this." He merely nodded, unsure of how to respond. There was an atmosphere of unease that he couldn't explain. Upon reaching the square, Lucas found Mariana, who also seemed uncomfortable. "Did you notice too?" she asked in a low voice. Lucas nodded. "It's like something is wrong," he replied. Mariana looked around, trying to find a logical reason for the absence of the moon, but nothing explained what was happening. As the night progressed, the feeling that something sinister was about to happen lingered in the air, growing stronger by the minute. And, without anyone being able to foresee it, that moonless darkness would bring to light secrets the community never imagined they would have to confront. The darkness felt denser than ever, enveloping every house and street in the village like an oppressive blanket. Lucas and Mariana decided to head back home, but the sense of unease followed them. As they walked side by side, a strange sound echoed in the empty street, a soft whisper, almost indistinguishable, seeming to come from all directions. Lucas stopped, trying to identify the source of the sound. "Did you hear that?" he asked, looking around with narrowed eyes in the darkness. Mariana hesitated before responding. "I heard it, but it seemed distant." They fell silent, trying to catch any more sounds, but all they could hear was the gentle rustling of leaves in the trees. As they parted ways to return home, the sound returned, louder this time. It was like a chorus of voices, speaking disconnected and incomprehensible words, as if trying to penetrate Lucas's mind. He felt a shiver run down his spine, and fear began to grow within him. Turning a corner, he noticed a shadow moving quickly, disappearing behind a wall. His heart raced. Mariana had a similar experience. When she finally got home, she felt a presence behind her, but when she turned, there was nothing there. The whispers continued, now more insistent, as if they wanted to take something from her. With her heart pounding, she closed the door, trying to push away the fear growing in her chest. This was just the first of many manifestations the village would face that moonless night. The next day, the village was on edge. Lucas wasn't the only one who heard the whispers or felt strange presences during the night. Many villagers discussed the mysterious events, exchanging worried glances. Determined to understand what was happening, Lucas sought out Mr. Bento, an elder known for his stories about ancient legends and local mysteries. He found him sitting on his porch, calmly smoking his pipe. "Mr. Bento, have you ever heard of anything like this before?" Lucas asked, describing the whispers and the moonless darkness. The old man's expression grew serious, and he fell silent for a moment, as if weighing whether to share what he knew. "There's an ancient story," he began slowly. "A moonless night, where darkness swallows the light, and beings from the shadows come to seek what they need to survive. They say these entities feed on emotions, especially the darker ones: fear, sadness, anger. The stronger the emotion, the more power they have." Mr. Bento's words left Lucas unsettled. "So, they're here to hurt us?" The elder shook his head. "Not exactly. They feed on our weaknesses. They make us lose ourselves in our own fears. The more divided and filled with anguish we are, the stronger they become." With a chill running down his spine, Lucas realized that the community needed to unite to confront this threat. The shadows were not just external enemies. They reflected the darkest parts of each of them. As night fell once again, the darkness felt even more oppressive. The village lights flickered and failed, leaving entire stretches in darkness. The fear was palpable, as if each person could feel the shadows closing in, ready to devour any trace of hope. Pedro, a teenager known for his rebellious behavior, took refuge in a narrow alley after a heated argument with his parents. He had never taken the old stories seriously, but that night, he began to hear voices murmuring his worst thoughts. The shadows around him began to stretch, taking on shapes that resembled familiar figures. People he had fought with, memories of moments filled with anger and loneliness. They whispered, poking at his deepest wounds. "You're a failure. No one really cares about you," the voices said repeatedly. Pedro tried to push the thoughts away, but it felt impossible to ignore the words echoing in his mind. He started to run, but he couldn't escape the shadows that seemed to follow him. Meanwhile, Lucas and Mariana patrolled the village, trying to calm the residents. But everyone they encountered seemed more distressed, more vulnerable. Fear spread like a virus, and Lucas understood now that if they didn't do something to break this cycle, the entities would become uncontrollable. But how could he convince everyone to face their own fears when he was beginning to feel lost himself? The streets were deserted, and the silence was interrupted only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant sound of whispering voices. Lucas and Mariana met in the central square, where a few lamps still struggled to keep the darkness at bay. They knew they had to act before fear consumed them all. Mariana, always optimistic, took the initiative. "We need to bring people together, make them feel less alone. Maybe if we're all together, we can push this thing away," she suggested. Lucas agreed, but he knew it wouldn't be easy to convince the villagers to gather in the midst of such oppressive night. With effort, they managed to call a few residents to the square. Mariana, trying to keep spirits high, proposed that everyone light candles and lanterns, spreading the little light they had. The idea was simple, but there was something comforting about seeing the points of light scattered across the dark space, like stars trying to shine in a moonless sky. "Don't let fear control you," Lucas said, looking at the tired and scared faces around him. "These shadows feed off what we're feeling, our fear. We need to be stronger than they are. We need to unite." As more people joined in, lighting candles and sharing stories to distract themselves from fear, the shadows seemed to hesitate, retreating slightly. For the first time that long night, Lucas felt a thread of hope. Perhaps if they could stay together, they would have a chance to win. As the candles illuminated the square, a sense of calm began to spread, but Lucas knew there was still something dark within him that he needed to confront. He stepped away for a moment, sensing a familiar presence in the shadows. When he turned, he saw an indistinct figure forming, a vivid memory of someone he had lost long ago. The shadows had taken advantage of his pain, shaping it into a physical form. The figure whispered words Lucas had tried to forget. "You failed. If you had been stronger, things would have been different." It was a representation of his fears and regrets, a guilt he had carried since his younger brother's death. The shadows were exploiting this wound, trying to make him succumb to despair. Mariana found him at that moment, realizing what was happening. "Lucas, this isn't real," she said, placing her hand on his shoulder. "The shadows are using your feelings against you, but that doesn't define who you are." Her words pierced the whirlwind of negative thoughts swirling in Lucas's mind. He took a deep breath, letting the emotions flow instead of suppressing them. Accepting the pain instead of fleeing from it was liberating. Gradually, the shadowy figure before him dissipated, losing its strength. Mariana squeezed his hand, offering a reassuring smile. "We're in this together. We all need to face our fears so these shadows won't have power over us anymore." Lucas nodded, understanding that the true challenge was not to fight the entities but to overcome what was hidden within himself. Lucas's act of confronting his own shadows gave courage to the other villagers. Seeing him and Mariana not yielding to fear, more people began to gather in the square, bringing lanterns, candles, and even small makeshift bonfires. The space that had once been dark and oppressive was now filled with light, warmth, and above all, hope. Pedro, who had isolated himself after his own terrifying experiences, appeared in the square with a hesitant look. He didn't want to admit he was scared, but watching Lucas confront his own demons stirred something within him. Cautiously, he approached the group and, for the first time, openly spoke about what he was feeling. "I thought no one cared about me," he confessed, his voice trembling. "But I realized I was wrong, and maybe if we support each other, we can face this together." Pedro's words inspired others to share their own stories. One by one, the villagers began to speak, venting their frustrations, fears, and the memories the shadows had tried to use against them. As they spoke, the shadows seemed to recede, as if the light they were creating, not just physically but emotionally, was too powerful for them to endure. Lucas and Mariana looked around, witnessing the transformation unfolding before their eyes. The shadows no longer dominated the space. The community, once divided and trapped in their own problems, was now coming together, sharing a strength that transcended any darkness. Despite the light and the growing unity in the square, the shadows were not willing to give up. They launched a final assault, manifesting in even more disturbing and threatening forms. Hissing voices rose in the air, trying to sow discord and confusion. Some dark figures approached the villagers, whispering lies that could trigger panic and separation. Pedro was one of the first victims of this new attack. He began to hear the shadows murmuring his old fears, trying to convince him that the unity in the square wasn't real, that everyone was pretending to care. His eyes filled with doubt, but before he could retreat, Lucas stepped closer, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone, Pedro. We're all fighting this," Lucas said, his voice firm and steady. "If the shadows want to separate us, it's because they know together we are stronger than they are." Lucas's words resonated through the square, and the villagers joined in a symbolic gesture, holding hands to form a circle of light. The shadows reacted violently, trying to break the bond connecting them, but the community resisted, keeping the connection intact. Mariana, standing beside Lucas, began to sing a soft song, a melody that seemed to dissipate the darkness, and the others joined in, turning the square into a chorus of hopeful voices. The entities launched one last wave of terror, trying to make everyone give in, but the unity of the community, strengthened by the acceptance of their own vulnerabilities and solidarity, proved to be more powerful. The shadows began to disperse, retreating to the edges of the square, unable to withstand the light and sound emanating from the villagers' unity. As the first lights of dawn began to break on the horizon, the darkness that had dominated the village began to dissipate. The shadows that once threatened every corner and nook were now receding, unable to resist the growing brightness. The villagers, exhausted but relieved, watched the moon timidly reappear in the sky, casting a soft glow over the united community. Lucas and Mariana, along with the others, took deep breaths, feeling the restored calm gradually spread throughout the village. The whispering voices disappeared, and the air felt lighter, filled with the renewed hope that the night had been overcome. Pedro, who had led the resistance against his own doubts, smiled at Lucas, grateful for having found the courage to confront his fears. In the central square, where so many times light and unity had triumphed over darkness, the villagers began to celebrate. Candles and lanterns, now extinguished, were carefully stored as reminders of the night that brought them together. The community felt stronger and more connected than ever, aware that together they could face any adversity. As the sun rose fully, illuminating every corner of the village, Lucas looked up at the sky and felt a deep peace. The moonless night had left scars, but it had also taught everyone about the importance of unity, hope, and the courage to confront their own shadows. The village was ready to move forward, strengthened by the shared experience and the lessons learned during that unforgettable night. With dawn finally breaking the darkness, the village breathed a sigh of relief. The first light of day revealed tired faces, but filled with gratitude and hope. Lucas watched the sky brighten, reflecting on the night they had faced together. Every shadow that had tried to sow fear was now fading with the rising light, symbolizing the victory of unity over adversity. Mariana approached Lucas, holding his hand tenderly. "We did it, thanks to all of us," she said, her eyes shining with emotion. Lucas smiled, feeling lighter than he had in a long time. "Yes, we learned that together we are stronger and that facing our fears makes us invincible," he replied, looking around at the villagers sharing smiles and hugs. Pedro, once skeptical and isolated, now appeared more open and collaborative. He thanked Lucas for his leadership and courage, promising that he would never let fear control his life again. Mr. Bento, the village elder, watched with pride, knowing he had passed on the lessons of solidarity and resilience that had saved the community. As the sun rose completely, illuminating every corner of the village, Lucas felt a profound peace. The moonless night had left scars, but it had also strengthened the bonds among the villagers. They were ready to face any future challenges, united by the shared experience and the lessons learned in the darkness.